The remaining Corvin ships passed through the ghostly image of the Hanbit like they were flying through empty space. Admiral Crixon watched in horror as his final attack failed completely. His last 8 warships crashed into asteroids or collided with each other, their hulls torn apart by impacts they never saw coming. "What is this?" he screamed into his communications system. "How can a ship become a ghost? This violates every law of physics in the universe." "Not every law," Captain Deho replied calmly as the Hanbit became solid again, appearing right next to the Corvin flagship. "Just the ones you know about. Humans have been studying quantum physics and dimensional theory for centuries. We learned how to shift our molecular structure between different phases of reality." The Blood Talon was now alone in space, surrounded by the wreckage of Admiral Crixon's once mighty fleet. 29 ships had been destroyed or disabled by a single human vessel and its swarm of tiny drones. The most feared military commander in the Corvin Empire sat in his command chair, staring at the impossible scene before him. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "We are the Corvin Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. How can we be defeated by primitive humans?" "Because you never understood what primitive really means," Deho explained. "You thought it meant weak. You thought it meant stupid. But primitive just means we do things differently than you do." Sunmi spoke up from her weapons station. "Captain, the flagship's weapons are still active. Should I disable them?" "Give Admiral Crixon a chance to surrender first," Deho replied. "Even Corvins deserve the opportunity to choose life over death." He opened a direct channel to the enemy. "Flagship, Admiral Crixon, this is Captain Kim of the human vessel Hanbit. Your fleet has been defeated. Your ships are destroyed. Your crew is dead or dying. I'm offering you one chance to surrender peacefully." The response came back filled with rage and hatred. "Never. Corvins do not surrender to inferior species. I would rather die than bow to human scum." "Then you have chosen death," Deho said sadly. "Sunmi, end this." A single ghost missile phased through the Blood Talon's shields and armor, appearing inside the ship's power core. The explosion was visible from millions of kilometers away as the massive flagship tore itself apart from the inside. Admiral Crixon's final transmission was cut short by the blast that consumed his ship and ended his life. Silence fell over the battlefield. The space around them was filled with floating debris and the wreckage of what had once been the most powerful fleet in Corvin military history. Not a single enemy ship remained intact. "Battle status report," Deho requested. "All Corvin vessels, destroyed or disabled," Woojin confirmed. "No enemy survivors detected. Our drone swarm is returning to the ship." "Hull damage?" "Minor scratches from asteroid debris," Boram reported with a grin. "Nothing that can't be fixed with some paint and a few new plates." "Casualties?" "None, Captain," Heejin said. "All crew members are safe and accounted for. 30-to-1 odds. 0 human casualties. Complete victory." "Incoming transmission from the Nexari convoy," Heejin announced. "Ambassador Veltar wants to speak with you personally, Captain." "Put him through." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the pale, elegant face of the Nexari ambassador. His large eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. Behind him, the bridge of the Eternal Harmony was crowded with diplomats and crew members, all staring at the human captain who had just accomplished the impossible. "Captain Kim," the ambassador began, his voice shaking with emotion. I don't have words for what you have done. You saved not just our lives, but the peace treaty that will end this terrible war. Millions of people across dozens of worlds will live because of your courage today." "You would have done the same for us," Deho replied simply. "You proved that during the Centauri plague. Friends help friends." "But how?" Ambassador Veltar asked. "How did one small human ship destroy an entire Corvin battle fleet? Your technology appeared so primitive when we first met your species. We thought humans were centuries behind the rest of us in scientific development." Deho smiled. "We let you think that because it was useful. When everyone believes you're harmless, they ignore you. When they ignore you, you can work on projects without interference. When you work without interference, you can create things that surprise people. The modifications to your ship, the ambassador said with growing understanding. They weren't random repairs. They were planned improvements. Every piece served a purpose, Boram confirmed. The strange hull plating that everyone laughed at, active camouflage and quantum phase shifters, the irregular engine configuration, micro-jump capability and gravitational manipulation, the odd protrusions from our superstructure, hidden weapons and drone launch systems. We've been working on this technology for years, Taemin added. While other species focused on making bigger ships with bigger guns, we focused on making smarter ships with smarter systems. Ambassador Veltar leaned forward in his chair. Captain Kim, your victory today will change everything. When word of this battle spreads throughout the galaxy, every species will have to reconsider their opinion of humanity. The age of dismissing humans as primitive is over. Maybe, Deho said, or maybe they'll just think this was luck. Either way, we'll be ready. 3 days later, the Hanbit docked at Kepler Station. But this time, things were very different. Instead of being assigned the worst parking space and ignored by everyone, the human ship was met by a delegation of alien officials. Dock workers handled their cargo with careful respect. Other ship captains watched them with nervous attention. The story of the battle had spread through the galactic communication networks faster than light. Every species had heard about the mysterious human cargo ship that destroyed a Corvan Armada. Some didn't believe it. Others demanded to know how such a thing was possible. All of them looked at human ships with new eyes. As Captain Deho walked through the station's corridors, aliens stepped aside to let him pass. Valian officers who had once mocked his crew now nodded politely. Torgan traders who had laughed at his ship now spoke to him with respect. Even the proud Nexari diplomats bowed when they saw him. "Captain," called out a young Valian port official, "my supervisor wants to know if your ship requires any special maintenance services. We want to make sure everything is perfect for your next departure." "Just the standard fuel and supplies," Deho replied. "Same as always." But as he said it, he noticed something new in the alien's eyes. It wasn't just respect, it was fear. Fear of what other surprises humanity might have hidden away. Fear of what other primitive technology might actually be more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen before. That evening, as the crew gathered in their ship's mess hall for dinner, they received a priority message from Earth Command. He-Jin read it aloud to the others. "Congratulations on the successful field test of Project Hanbit. Phase 2 of the Human Integration Program is now authorized. Proceed to Coordinates Alpha 77 for pickup of additional equipment and crew assignments." "Phase 2? Taemin?" asked. Deho smiled as he looked around at his crew. The Hanbit was just the beginning. Earth has been building more ships like ours. Ships that look harmless but carry technology that will surprise the galaxy. Ships with crews trained to think like humans instead of like aliens. "How many ships?" Sunmi asked with excitement. "Enough," Deho replied. "Enough to make sure that humanity never gets ignored again." Outside the viewports of the mess hall, they could see other ships docking at Kepler Station. Ships that looked ordinary, unremarkable, barely worth noticing. Ships with human crews who went about their business quietly and efficiently. Ships that everyone was still ignoring. For now. But not for much longer. The message had been sent across the galaxy in the wreckage of Admiral Crixon's fleet. Humanity was no longer the primitive species that others could dismiss or attack without consequences. They were players in the galactic community now, whether the other species liked it or not. And the ship everyone ignored had shown them exactly what humans were capable of when they stopped pretending to be helpless. The age of human space power had begun. The end. The 29. Corvan warships moved toward the Hanbit like a pack of hungry wolves. Admiral Crixon had ordered every ship in his fleet to destroy the human vessel, and now they came from all directions. The space around the small cargo ship filled with plasma fire and torpedo explosions. "Incoming missiles from multiple targets," Woojin reported. His voice calm despite the chaos on his tactical screen. "I count over 200 warheads heading our way." Evasive maneuvers, Captain Deho ordered. Boram, take us into the asteroid field. Tae-min, remember those gravity maps you've been working on for the past 6 months? Tae-min's eyes lit up with understanding. The gravitational anomalies near the binary stars? Yes, Captain. I've been charting every one of them. Good. It's time to put that work to use. The Hanbit dove toward a cluster of spinning asteroids, moving so fast that any normal ship would have been torn apart by the gravitational forces. But this was not a normal ship. The strange modifications that covered its hull suddenly made perfect sense as they activated one by one. Micro jump drive engaged, Boram called out. We're skipping through the small wormholes between the asteroids. The pursuing Corvin ships watched in amazement as the human vessel seemed to teleport from one asteroid to another. One moment it was behind a large rock. The next it appeared on the other side of the asteroid field, completely unharmed. How are they doing that? Demanded Captain Vorthak of the destroyer Deathstrike. Ships can't jump such short distances. The calculations alone would take hours. They're not using normal jump technology, Admiral Crixon replied grimly. These humans have found ways to bend space that we never thought possible. The Hanbit used the asteroids like stepping stones, jumping from one gravitational well to another. Each microjump took it further from the Corvin weapons and closer to its real destination, a massive asteroid with an unusual composition that Tae-min had been studying for months. Captain, Hyejin called out, I'm detecting some kind of deployment from our cargo bay. Multiple small contacts separating from our ship. Phase 2 is now active, Deho announced to his crew. Sunmi, release the swarm. What the Corvins had thought were ordinary cargo containers suddenly opened like metal flowers. Hundreds of small objects poured out of the Hanbit's hull. Tiny ships no bigger than fighter craft, each one moving with perfect coordination. What are those things? Captain Morgax of the battlecruiser Bonecrusher stared at his sensors in confusion. They look like insects. Autonomous combat drones, Sunmi explained with satisfaction. Each one has its own brain, but they all think together like a hive mind. We call them the swarm. The drones moved unlike anything the Corvins had ever seen. Instead of flying in formation like normal fighters, they flowed through space like a living cloud. They split apart and came back together, surrounded enemy ships and vanished, struck from impossible angles and disappeared before return fire could hit them. Target the small ships, Admiral Crixon ordered. Destroy those drones before they can attack. But the swarm was too fast, too smart, and too unpredictable. The Corvin gunners were trained to fight other warships that moved in straight lines and followed military tactics. They had no idea how to hit targets that moved like angry bees. The first drone attack came without warning. A group of 30 drones swarmed around the destroyer Dark Moon, moving so fast they looked like streaks of light. Each drone carried a small but powerful explosive charge designed to attack weak points in ship armor. They're hitting our sensor arrays, the destroyer's captain reported. Now they're attacking our weapon mounts. How do they know exactly where to strike? Because we've been studying Corvin ship designs for years, Wu Jin said quietly as he coordinated the attack from his tactical station. We know every weakness, every vulnerable spot, every place where one small explosion can cause maximum damage. The Dark Moon tried to defend itself, but its weapons were designed to fight large ships, not tiny, fast-moving targets. The big plasma cannons couldn't turn fast enough to track the drones. The torpedo launchers were useless against targets, too small to lock onto. One by one, the destroyer's systems failed as the drones found and destroyed the critical components. Within minutes, the mighty warship was drifting powerless in space, its crew trapped inside a metal tomb. Impossible, Admiral Crixon breathed as he watched his ships being picked apart by enemies they couldn't hit. Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. How can we not stop these primitive drones? Because you're still thinking like Corvins, Deho replied over the open channel. You build big ships with big weapons to fight other big ships. We build small, smart weapons that can think for themselves and work together. More Corvin ships fell to the swarm. The battlecruiser Iron Fist lost all its engines when drones attacked its power core. The destroyer Blood River exploded when tiny charges found their way into its ammunition storage. The assault ship Terror Wing went dark as drones cut through its command center. "This is not warfare," Captain Zarthul of the Voidhammer screamed over the communications. "This is not honorable combat. These humans fight like cowards." "No," Deho corrected him. "We fight like humans. We use our brains instead of just our weapons. We adapt instead of just following old tactics. We survive." Admiral Crixon tried to rally his remaining ships. "All vessels, form defensive formation Delta 7. Concentrate your fire on the main human ship. Ignore the drones and destroy their command vessel." But the Hanbit was no longer where the Corvins expected it to be. While they had been fighting the swarm, Taman had guided the ship through a complex series of gravitational slingshots around the binary stars. The human vessel now moved faster than any Corvin ship could match. "How are they moving so fast?" demanded Captain Hixmar of the Steel Talon. "Our engines are more powerful than theirs." "Power isn't everything," Boram said as she pushed the Hanbit's modified engines to their limits. "We don't fight the gravity wells. We use them. Every asteroid, every planet, every star becomes part of our weapon system." The Hanbit whipped around a small moon, using its gravity to change direction without slowing down. The pursuing Corvin ships tried to follow, but they were too big and too slow to make such tight turns. 3 of them crashed into the moon's surface. 2 more collided with each other, trying to avoid the same fate. "Captain," Taman called out with excitement, "I've found the perfect position. The asteroid with the iron-nickel core is directly ahead. If we can get the Corvins to follow us." "I see it," Deho smiled. "Sunmi, prepare the mass driver." "What's a mass driver?" Hyejin asked. "Remember that strange cannon we built into the ship's nose?" Sunmi replied. "The one that looks like a cargo loading tube? It's actually a magnetic acceleration weapon. We can turn any piece of metal into a bullet traveling at incredible speed." The Hanbit flew straight toward the massive asteroid, with a dozen Corvin ships chasing behind it. At the last possible second, the human ship used its microjump drive to appear on the other side of the asteroid. The mass driver fired. A chunk of iron the size of a building shot out of the asteroid like a bullet from a gun. The magnetic accelerators built into the Hanbit's hull gave it the speed of a meteor. It struck the lead Corvin ship and passed completely through it, then hit the ship behind it and the one behind that. 1 shot, 3 ships destroyed. "Impossible," Admiral Crixon whispered as he watched his fleet being torn apart by weapons that shouldn't exist. "How can primitives do this to us? We are the most feared military force in the galaxy." "You were," Deho corrected him. "But you made one fatal mistake. You thought that being feared was the same as being smart. You thought that having bigger weapons meant you were better warriors." The swarm continued its deadly work, picking off damaged ships and attacking the survivors. The Corvin formation fell apart as captains panicked and tried to save their own vessels. Their perfect military discipline crumbled in the face of an enemy they couldn't understand. "Admiral," came a desperate voice from the destroyer Night Terror. "We've lost half our fleet. Our weapons can't hit their drones. Their ship moves like nothing we've ever seen. Request permission to retreat." Admiral Crixon looked at his tactical display. Of his original 30 ships, only 8 were still operational. The others were destroyed, disabled, or drifting powerless in space. His mighty armada had been defeated by a single human cargo vessel and a swarm of tiny drones. "No retreat," he snarled. "All remaining ships ramming speed. If we can't destroy them with weapons, we'll crush them with our hulls." But as the surviving Corvin ships accelerated toward the Hanbit, Captain Deho smiled coldly. The real battle was just beginning. "Boram," he said quietly, "activate the final surprise." "With pleasure, Captain. Initiating Ghost Protocol." The Hanbit began to flicker and fade, becoming translucent like a ghost. The ramming Corvin ships passed right through it as if it wasn't there at all. Admiral Crixon had just learned the final lesson about underestimating humans. Sometimes the ship you're trying to ram isn't really there anymore. The Hanbit came out of the asteroid field like a ghost emerging from the shadows. Captain Deho watched the battle through the main view screen as his ship approached the chaos. The Nexari convoy was down to just 5 ships now, and all of them were badly damaged. "Distance to target?" he asked quietly. 2 million kilometers and closing, Taemin reported. "The Corvins still haven't noticed us. They're too busy destroying the remaining Nexari vessels." On the screen, they could see the massive Corvin fleet spread out in a hunting formation. Each ship was a dark, angular monster covered in weapons. The largest vessel, a battlecruiser called the Blood Talon, hung in the center like a spider waiting to finish its prey. "That's Admiral Crixon's flagship," Woojin identified. "He's the one who destroyed the human research station at Beta Centauri last year. Killed 3,000 civilians." Deho's jaw tightened. "Then this will be personal as well as professional." The Corvin ships moved with deadly precision. They had been bred for war for thousands of years, and it showed in everything they did. Their tactics were perfect, their formations flawless, their weapons devastating. The remaining Nexari ships didn't stand a chance. "Captain," Heejin called, "out. I'm getting a transmission from the Corvin flagship. They're laughing about something." "Put it on speaker." Admiral Crixon's voice filled the bridge, speaking in the common galactic language. His words were cold and cruel, like metal scraping against stone. "Attention, Nexari cowards. Your pathetic peace treaty dies with you today. The war will continue until every one of your worlds burns." Then came another voice, probably one of his officers. "Admiral, there's a small ship approaching from the asteroid field. Looks like a human cargo vessel." The sound of laughter echoed through the transmission. Admiral Crixon found this news very amusing. "A human ship? Here? What do these primitive scavengers think they can do against the might of the Corvin Empire? Shall I order a destroyer to deal with it?" the officer asked. "Just one destroyer?" More laughter. "You flatter the humans. Send the Void Render. Tell Captain Thaxel to make it quick. I want to finish off these Nexari ships before they bore me to death with their crying." The transmission ended. On the tactical display, they could see one of the Corvin destroyers breaking away from the main fleet. It was heading straight for the handbit, the Void Render, Woojin read from his database. "Corvin destroyer class, crew of 800, 20 heavy plasma cannons, torpedo launchers, and enough armor to stop a small moon." "Compared to us?" Deho asked. "It's 15 times bigger, 50 times more heavily armed, and has shields that could protect a space station." Boram looked up from her engineering console with a wild grin on her face. "Captain, all our special systems are online and ready. The Corvins are about to get the biggest surprise of their lives." "Sunmi, weapons status?" "All systems green, Captain. The Ghost missiles are loaded and ready. The kinetic penetrators are charged. The EMP mines are deployed around our hull. Hyojin, send a message to Ambassador Veltar. Tell him to take his remaining ships and get as far away as possible. Things are about to get very dangerous out here." "Message sent, Captain. The Ambassador is asking what we plan to do against 30 Corvin warships." Deho smiled coldly. "Tell him he's about to see why humans are still alive despite being surrounded by bigger, stronger species for our entire history." The Void Render approached with the confidence of a predator stalking helpless prey. Captain Thaxel probably expected this to take less than a minute. One shot from his heavy plasma cannons would be enough to vaporize the small human ship. But, as the Corvin destroyer came within firing range, something impossible happened. The Hanbit simply vanished. "What?" Captain Thaxel's voice came over the open channel. "Where did it go? How can a ship just disappear?" "Visual camouflage activated," Boram reported with satisfaction. "The hull modifications everyone laughed at? They're actually light bending. Projectors were still here, but their sensors can't find us." The Void Render fired its weapons at empty space, trying to hit a target that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The massive plasma bolts passed harmlessly through areas where the human ship appeared to be. "Impossible," Admiral Crixon's voice crackled over the communications. "No ship that small could carry stealth technology that advanced. That's what they get for judging by appearances." Taemin muttered as he made a series of rapid course corrections that should have been impossible for any normal ship. The Hanbit moved like a dancer, spinning and weaving around the Corvan destroyers. Weapons fire. The irregular engine configuration that aliens had mocked allowed for vector changes that violated every law of physics the Corvans understood. How are they doing that? Came another voice from the Corvan fleet. Their ship is moving, in directions that should tear it apart. Because we built it to do exactly this, Boram explained to her own crew. Every modification, every strange angle, every piece that looks like junk, it all has a purpose. We can make maneuvers that would destroy any other ship. Sunmi had been waiting for her moment. As the Hanbit danced around the confused destroyer, she activated the weapon systems that had been hidden in plain sight. "Ghost missiles away," she announced. What the Corvans had thought were random cargo containers suddenly opened up to reveal missile launchers. But these weren't ordinary missiles. They used human technology that other species said was impossible, phase-shift warheads that could pass through solid matter. The missiles appeared to hit the Void Render's shields and bounce off harmlessly. Captain Thaxel laughed with relief. "Ha! Is that the best humans can do? Our shields stopped them easily." But his laughter died when the missiles suddenly reappeared inside his ship's hull and exploded. "Impossible!" he screamed as explosions tore through his destroyer from the inside. "Nothing can penetrate our armor. Nothing can get through our shields." "Phase shift technology," Sunmi explained calmly as she prepared the next attack. "The missiles pass through your defenses like they're not even there, then become solid again inside your ship. We learned the technique from studying how some particles behave in quantum physics." The Void Render was already dying, but Sunmi wasn't finished. She activated the kinetic penetrators, weapons that looked like simple metal rods but accelerated to incredible speeds using human electromagnetic technology. The penetrators struck the destroyer's hull with the force of small meteors. They punched through the Corvan armor like it was paper, creating holes that vented atmosphere and crew into space. "This is impossible." Captain Thaxel's voice was filled with panic now. "We are the most advanced military force in the galaxy. How can primitives do this to us?" "You made one mistake," Deho said, opening a channel to the dying ship. "You assumed that different meant inferior. You thought that because our technology doesn't look like yours, it must be worse than yours." The Void Render tried to retreat, but it was too late. The EMP mines that had been quietly attached to its hull during the battle suddenly activated. Every electronic system on the destroyer died instantly. "Our technology isn't just different," Deho continued as the powerless ship drifted helplessly. "It's better. We learned to make weapons that your computers can't predict, defenses that your sensors can't detect, and maneuvers that your tactics can't counter." The final explosion lit up space as the Void Render broke apart. In less than 5 minutes, one of the Corvan Empire's most feared destroyers had been completely destroyed by a single human cargo ship. The silence that followed was deafening. "This is Admiral Crixon to all ships," came the transmission from the Corvan flagship. The laughter was gone from his voice now. "The humans have some kind of advanced technology we haven't seen before. All vessels are to target the human ship. Immediately, destroy it at all costs." "All 29 remaining ships?" Wujin asked, checking his tactical display. "All 29, Deho confirmed. "Boram, are our systems ready for a real fight?" "Captain, we've been waiting our whole lives for this moment. Let's show the galaxy what humans can really do." On the view screen, the entire Corvan fleet was turning toward them. 29 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity was supposed to possess. It should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was just the beginning. "All hands," Deho announced over the ship's intercom. "This is what we trained for. This is why we built this ship. This is our chance to prove that humans belong among the stars." The Hanbit accelerated toward the advancing fleet, no longer hiding, no longer running. The ship everyone had ignored was about to remind the galaxy why humans had survived everything the universe had thrown at them. Admiral Crixon was about to learn that underestimating humanity was the last mistake he would ever make. 3 days had passed since the Hanbit left Kepler Station. The ship moved through space at a steady pace, following the main shipping route called the Sigma Corridor. This was one of the busiest space lanes in the galaxy, where hundreds of ships traveled every day carrying cargo between the major systems. Captain Deho sat in his command chair, drinking coffee from a metal cup. The bridge was small and cramped compared to the big alien ships, but everything worked perfectly. His crew moved around him with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their job. "Captain," called Hyojin from her communication station. "I'm picking up some strange signals ahead. Sounds like distress calls." Deho set down his coffee and leaned forward. "What kind of distress calls?" Hyojin pressed her headphones tighter against her ears and adjusted her equipment. Her face grew serious as she listened. "It's bad, Captain. Really bad. There's a Nexari diplomatic convoy under attack. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them." "Nexari diplomats?" Taemin looked up from his navigation charts. What would they be doing out here? Probably carrying important peace documents. Wu Jin said quietly. He was studying the tactical display on his screen. "The Nexari have been trying to stop the war between the Corvan Empire and the outer colonies for months." Hyojin's face went pale as she continued listening to the emergency signals. "Captain, it's not just pirates or raiders, it's a full Corvan battle fleet. I count at least 30 ships, all heavy warships. The Nexari convoy only has 12 vessels, and most of those are just transport ships." Deho stood up and walked to the main view screen. In the distance, tiny flashes of light marked where the battle was taking place. Even from this far away, they could see explosions as ships were destroyed. "The Nexari flagship is the Eternal Harmony," Yejin continued. "Ambassador Veltar is on board with the peace treaty documents. If those papers are destroyed, the war will continue for years. Millions more people will die." Sunmi looked up from her weapons console. "How many Corvan ships did you say? 30? "At least 30, Yejin confirmed. "And they're all big ones. Battle cruisers, destroyers, assault ships. This isn't a raid. It's a full military operation." The bridge fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. The Corvan Empire was trying to stop the peace treaty by killing the Nexari ambassador and destroying the documents. Without those papers, the war would go on and on. "Are there any other ships nearby that could help?" Daiho asked. Hyojin checked her long-range scanners. "There's a Valian patrol group about 6 hours away, but they only have 4 ships. There's also a Torgan mining convoy, but their ships aren't armed for combat. Everyone else is too far away to arrive in time." Taemin ran calculations on his navigation computer. "Captain, at our current speed, we could reach the battle in about 20 minutes, but..." "But what?" Deho asked, though he already knew what his navigator was thinking. "But it would be suicide," Taemin said bluntly. "We're just one ship against 30 Corvan warships. Each one of their destroyers is 10 times bigger than us. Their main battle cruisers could destroy us with a single shot." Boram spoke up from her engineering station. "The Corvans have the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Their shields are stronger than ours, their weapons are more powerful, and their armor is thicker. On paper, we don't stand a chance." Wu Jin nodded grimly. "Military doctrine says you need at least equal numbers to have a fair fight. 3-to-1 odds for a guaranteed victory. We would be facing 30-to-1 odds. No computer in the galaxy would give us any chance of winning." The distress calls continued to come through the communications system. They could hear the panic in the Nexari voices as their ships were picked off one by one. The diplomatic escort vessels were trying to protect the ambassador's ship, but they were not military vessels. They were being destroyed quickly and efficiently. "Please," came one voice over the radio. "Anyone who can hear this, we need help. We carry documents that could end a war and save millions of lives. If anyone is out there, please help us." Deho closed his eyes and thought. The smart thing to do would be to change course and avoid the battle. One small human cargo ship could not possibly make a difference against a full Corvan armada. They would just be throwing their lives away for nothing. But then he remembered something from 5 years ago. The Centauri plague had struck 3 human colony worlds. Millions of people were dying, and Earth's medical ships were weeks away. It was the Nexari who had answered humanity's desperate calls for help. They had sent their best doctors and medical supplies, asking for nothing in return. Ambassador Veltar had been there personally, working alongside human doctors to save lives. The Nexari had lost several of their own people to the plague, but they never stopped helping until the crisis was over. "Captain," Sunmi said quietly, "the Nexari saved my home colony during the plague. My little sister would have died without their help." "My brother too," added Boram. "The Nexari medicine was the only thing that worked." Hyejin nodded. "They helped us when we needed it most. They didn't ask for payment or favors. They just helped because it was the right thing to do." Daeho opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Each person on the bridge had been affected by Nexari kindness in some way. These aliens had proven themselves to be true friends to humanity, even when humans were still considered primitive by most of the galaxy. "Captain," Wu Jin said, "I know the odds are impossible. But if we don't try to help, who will? The Valians won't risk their ships against a full Corvan fleet. The Torgans only care about profit. Everyone else is too far away." "The peace treaty," Taemin added. "If that document is destroyed, the war continues. How many more planets will burn? How many more colonies will be wiped out?" Another distress call came through the speakers. This time it was Ambassador Veltar himself. "This is Ambassador Veltar of the Nexari Republic. Our convoy is under attack by Corvan forces. We carry vital peace documents that must reach the Galactic Council. If any vessel can hear this transmission, please relay our position to the nearest military forces. We cannot hold out much longer." Daeho looked at the tactical display. The Nexari convoy was down to 8 ships now. 4 had already been destroyed. At the rate they were being picked off, the entire convoy would be gone in less than an hour. He thought about the peace treaty. He thought about the millions of people who would die if the war continued. He thought about the Nexari doctors who had risked their lives to save human colonists. Most of all, he thought about what his crew was capable of when everyone else thought they were helpless. "Boram," he said finally, "how long would it take to power up our special systems?" The engineer's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. "About 15 minutes for full power, Captain. Less if we skip some of the safety checks." "Sunmi, are our weapons ready?" "They've been ready since we left Kepler Station, Captain. Just waiting for your word." Wujin, tactical analysis. If we approach the battle from the asteroid field to the south, could we get close without being detected? Wujin studied his screens carefully. "Yes, Captain. The asteroids would mask our approach until we're almost on top of them. The Corvans are so focused on the Nexari ships they probably won't notice us until it's too late." Taemin, plot A. Course, best possible speed. Course plotted and ready, Captain. Daeho sat back down in his command chair and picked up his coffee. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. We're going to help our friends." As the crew rushed to prepare for combat, Hyejin sent one final message to the Nexari convoy. "Ambassador Veltar, this is the human cargo vessel Hanbit. We're coming to help. Hold on just a little longer." The response came back immediately, filled with disbelief. "Human vessel, you must retreat immediately. This is a full Corvan battle fleet. Your single ship cannot survive against such odds." Daeho smiled as he finished his coffee. "Ambassador, you're about to learn something new about humans. We specialize in impossible odds." The Hanbit changed course and accelerated toward the battle. Behind them, the ship's hidden systems began to power up. Weapon systems that looked like cargo containers started to activate. Defensive systems that appeared to be random hull modifications began their startup sequences. The Corvans had 30 ships and thought they were fighting helpless diplomats. They had no idea that the ship everyone ignored was about to join the fight. The morning sun cast long shadows across Kepler Station's massive docking bay. Ships of all sizes floated in their assigned spaces, connected to the station by thick metal tubes. The air hummed with the sound of engines, cargo loaders, and 1,000 different conversations in 100 alien languages. Captain Daeho Kim stood on the loading platform, watching his crew work. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the edges, and his face had the weathered look of someone who had spent many years in space. He wore a simple blue jumpsuit with the human merchant fleet patch on the shoulder. "Captain, they want us to move our ship again," said Boram Lee, climbing up from the cargo hold. She was the ship's engineer, a woman in her 30s with oil stains on her hands and a frustrated look on her face. The dockmaster says we're blocking the view of some important Valian cruiser. Daeho looked over at their ship, the Hanbit. Even he had to admit it was not much to look at. The hull was made of different colored metal plates that didn't quite match. Some parts looked new, others looked like they had been salvaged from old ships. Strange boxes and pipes stuck out from the sides at odd angles. The whole thing looked like someone had built a spaceship from spare parts found in a junkyard. Let them complain, Daeho said quietly. We paid for this docking space just like everyone else. A group of tall, elegant aliens walked past their loading area. These were Vailians with their blue skin and graceful movements. They wore expensive-looking uniforms covered in shiny badges. One of them pointed at the Hanbit and said something in his own language. The others laughed. What did he say? Asked Taemin Park, the ship's navigator. He was a young man with quick eyes and nervous energy. He said our ship looks like a flying garbage can. Translated Heejin Choi. She was their communications officer and spoke several alien languages. He also said humans should stick to selling scrap metal. Taemin's face turned red. Maybe we should tell them what our ship can really do. No, Daeho said firmly. Let them think what they want to think. More aliens gathered near the observation deck that overlooked the docking bay. Word had spread that there was a human ship worth looking at, but not in a good way. A group of Torgan traders pointed and made jokes about the Hanbit's small size. The Torgans were huge, bear-like creatures who valued size and strength above all else. To them, the human ship looked like a toy. Look at those tiny humans, rumbled one Torgan in broken common language. They think they can travel the stars in that little rust bucket. It will probably fall apart before it leaves the system. Even the Nexari diplomats, who were usually polite to everyone, shook their heads sadly when they saw the human ship. The Nexari looked like tall, thin humans with pale skin and large eyes. They valued culture and learning, but they also respected good engineering. The Hanbit did not look like good engineering to them. It is sad to see a species struggle so much with basic technology, one Nexari ambassador whispered to another. Perhaps we should offer them some help. This ship is clearly not safe for space travel. Woojin Nam, the ship's tactical officer, overheard this comment. He was a quiet man who rarely showed his emotions, but his jaw tightened with anger. Should I explain to them how wrong they are, Captain? Not yet, Daeho replied. He watched as a sleek Corvan military ship glided into the docking bay. The Corvans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy, and their ships showed it. This one was all sharp angles and dark metal, with weapons that could be seen even from a distance. Let them keep thinking we're harmless. The Corvan ship's captain was visible through the bridge windows. He was a large reptilian creature with scales that caught the light. As his ship passed the human vessel, he actually laughed out loud. The sound echoed across the docking bay through his ship's external speakers. Humans, the Corvan captain called out in common language. You should go back to your little planet before you get hurt out here. Space is for real warriors, not for creatures who build ships from garbage. This insult was too much for Sunmi Kang, the weapons specialist. She was a small woman with fierce eyes and quick hands. Captain, just say the word. I can show him what our garbage can do. Patience, Daeho said. Our time will come. The dock workers assigned to service the Hanbit took their time and did sloppy work. They handled the human cargo roughly and made jokes about the ship's strange design. One worker accidentally dropped a crate of expensive electronics, then shrugged and said it probably didn't matter since humans couldn't afford good equipment anyway. Boram watched this with growing anger. She had spent months designing and building the modifications hidden throughout their ship. Every strange pipe and odd-shaped box had a purpose, even if the aliens couldn't see it. These idiots have no idea what they're looking at, she muttered. That's exactly the point, Daeho reminded her. The less they understand, the better for us. As the day went on, more aliens came to look at the human ship. It became a kind of entertainment for the different species. They would point and laugh, make jokes about human engineering, and place bets on whether the ship would explode when it tried to leave the station. A young Nexari student approached the human crew with what seemed like genuine concern. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I am studying engineering at the Nexari Academy. I was wondering if you would like some help improving your ship's design. I could suggest some basic modifications that might make it more efficient." Hyejin translated the offer to the captain. Daeho considered it for a moment, then walked over to the young alien. "Thank you for the offer," he said kindly. "But our ship works exactly the way we need it to work." The student looked confused. "But surely you can see that the design is not optimal. The hull plating is uneven, the engine configuration makes no sense, and those additions to the superstructure appear to serve no function at all." "Appearances can be deceiving," Daeho replied with a small smile. Later that evening, as the crew gathered in the ship's small mess hall for dinner, they could still hear aliens outside making jokes about their vessel. Taiman poked at his food and said, "Sometimes I wonder if we should just tell them the truth. Show them what we're really capable of. And lose our biggest advantage?" Boram shook her head. "Let them think we're primitive. Let them think we're weak. It makes our job so much easier." Wu Jin nodded in agreement. In the old Earth Wars, generals would sometimes dress as common soldiers. The enemy would ignore them, not knowing they were talking to the person who could destroy their entire army. "Exactly," Daeho said. "Every species in the galaxy thinks they know what humans are capable of. They see our simple technology and assume we're not a threat. They look at ships like ours and see junk. They don't see the real engineering that went into making this junk work better than their fancy vessels." Sunmi grinned. "I love it when they underestimate us. It makes the surprise so much better." As night fell over Kepler Station, the Hanbit sat quietly in its docking space. To anyone looking at it, the ship appeared to be nothing more than what the aliens said it was: a rust bucket held together by hope and desperation. The other ships in the bay gleamed with polished metal and advanced technology, but deep inside the Hanbit, hidden systems waited in standby mode. Computers that looked primitive on the outside ran calculations that would surprise the galaxy's best scientists. Weapons that appeared to be random hull attachments were actually more advanced than anything the Corvins had ever built. Daeho stood on the bridge looking out at the other ships through the main view screen. Tomorrow they would leave Kepler Station and continue their journey through the galaxy. They would carry their cargo, avoid attention, and let everyone continue to think exactly what they thought now. That humans were nothing special, that human ships were junk, that humans were not worth worrying about. He smiled to himself. Let them think that. It would make what came next so much more interesting. In a few days, the galaxy would learn something new about the ship everyone ignored. Something that would change how every alien species looked at humanity forever. But for now, the Hanbit was just another rust bucket in a crowded docking bay. Just another human ship that nobody important paid attention to, exactly the way Captain Daeho Kim wanted it.